My name is Tanya Barker. I'm 27 years old, and here's how my story begins. When I was 13, I learned what it meant to be truly alone, though I didn't understand it at the time. Back then, I was just a girl standing in front of the sliding glass doors of the Westfield Mall, clutching a crumpled $5 bill like it was some kind of lifeline. I remember watching the crowds drift past me, teenagers laughing over bubble tea moms hauling shopping bags, couples weaving in and out of the food court. The sun was slipping behind the parking lot, stretching long shadows across the pavement like dark fingers reaching toward me. And still I waited. 2 hours, then 3. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I didn't even sit down. I just stood there, staring at the exit, convinced my parents were coming back for me. They didn't. The last thing my dad said before the door slammed shut was, "You're old enough. Figure it out." His voice was flat, like he was reciting a grocery list. One hand was on the gear shift, the other gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles looked like polished stone. My mom nodded along her expression, unreadable. "You've got $5, she added. "Be smart with it." Then the van pulled away. No hesitation, no glance in the rear view, just gone. The pavement felt cold through my shoes, a chill I didn't recognize yet. Not until years later, when I'd understand that coldness wasn't about weather, it was about being unwanted. It wasn't the first time they'd done something like that, not really. Looking back, all the signs were there. My parents treated children like obligations with expiration dates. The second we could walk, we were supposed to act like adults. I say we, but really it was just me. My younger brother, Jamie, was their golden child. He could throw tantrums in public, and my parents would coo about how expressive he was. But me. If I spilled a glass of milk, I got the cold stare. The one that made my stomach twist. The one that made me feel like a stain on their otherwise perfect life. Growing up in that house meant learning how to disappear. Silence was rewarded. Tears were punished. I don't remember a single hug. Not one bedtime story, not one scraped knee kissed better. Just chores, expectations, accusations. By 10, I could cook a full meal, pack Jamie's school lunch, clean the house, and still get yelled at because Dad's coffee wasn't hot enough. There was always something wrong with me. I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too slow, too much. The mall incident was the moment the invisible thread holding me to them snapped. That night, after realizing they weren't coming back, I walked to a gas station and sat on the curb until the cold seeped into my bones. Eventually, I wandered to the Greyhound station, locked myself inside a bathroom stall, curled up on the toilet seat with my jacket over my knees, and cried without making a sound. It was the first of many nights I slept with one ear open. A janitor found me 2 days later. A social worker got involved. My school realized I'd been missing. They pulled my attendance record, saw the pattern, and flagged it. For a moment, I thought maybe finally someone would see what was happening. But my parents were excellent liars. They said I'd run away for attention. They said I was manipulative, dramatic, rebellious. They said I didn't want to do my homework. And somehow the system believed them. After 2 months in a group home, I was sent back to the same house where I learned to flinch at silence. This time, my parents were smarter about the punishment. They wouldn't abandon me physically, too risky. They would just chip at me in ways no one could prove. Unplug the refrigerator and blame me when the food spoiled. Hide bills and insist I'd lost them. Tell neighbors I was unstable and acting out again. By 16, I was working under the table at a local diner, sweeping floors and wiping counters until midnight. I hid the cash behind a loose tile in my closet. Home was a battlefield. Jamie, now a preteen, mimicked them, calling me names, parroting insults, treating me like some servant who'd failed an invisible test. I left on my 18th birthday. No note, no apology, no goodbye. Just a small backpack and the stubborn, shaking belief that anything was better than staying. I spent 9 years rebuilding myself. Cracked, scraped, and bruised, but rebuilding. I worked in a warehouse, slept on a coworker's couch for months, eventually saved enough to rent a tiny apartment with peeling paint and a sink that groaned whenever the water ran. I blocked my parents' numbers. Blocked Jamie's, too. Therapy came later, slowly, painfully. Healing came even slower. And then one Sunday afternoon, everything changed again. I was on the couch arguing with my roommate over which wings were better, buffalo or lemon pepper, when we heard a knock. No one ever knocked on our door. When I opened it, there was just a small envelope on the floor. No return address, just my name. The handwriting was familiar enough to make my stomach twist. My mother's. I froze before I even opened it. Inside was a pastel baby shower invitation. Little cartoon stork, bows, balloons. Join us to celebrate the arrival of baby Dawson. And on the RSVP line, Jamie Barker. Behind the invitation was a note written in my mother's delicate, forced warm handwriting. Tanya, we would really love to see you again. It's time to put the past behind us. Jamie is so excited to become a father, and it would mean the world if you came. Family should stick together. Mom. I read it 3 times. My hands shook so badly the paper fluttered. Family should stick together. Now they wanted me back. After 9 years of silence. After leaving me at a mall. After telling social workers I was a liar. After pretending I didn't exist. They were calling it family. I didn't respond, but something inside me cracked open. Not hope, not longing. Something darker. Something sharp. Because this wasn't an invitation. It was a warning. And I wasn't about to ignore it. I didn't respond to the invitation, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not for a second. It sat on my nightstand for days, soft pastel colors glowing in the early morning light, like a taunt. Or a dare. Jamie. The golden son. The one who got hugs, birthday balloons, second chances. The one who never had to eat alone at the kitchen table. The one whose tantrums were spirited while my silence was ungrateful. And now he was having a baby. A baby my parents expected me to celebrate. I kept telling myself to throw the invitation away, shred it, burn it, anything to stop the memories from creeping in. But every time I held it over the trash bin, my fingers froze. Something wasn't right. Something felt off. The wording, the timing, the sudden interest in my existence. And the worst part, I recognized that feeling. It was the same twist in my gut I used to get when my dad would call my name too calmly from across the house. The same cold numbness I felt when my mother would say, Tanya, can you come here a minute, with that sweet practiced tone that always preceded punishment. I couldn't ignore it. Not this time. So I started with the easiest place to look: social media. Jamie had become exactly the kind of person my parents always wanted him to be: polished, likable, charming on camera. His entire online presence looked like it had been dipped in honey and rolled in glitter. There were baby bump photos with his girlfriend Emery smiling like her teeth were sculpted. There were nursery updates, maternity photo shoots, ultrasound videos, captions splashed with sparkly emojis, and hashtags like #dadlife and #blessed. Scrolling through the curated perfection made something hot and bitter rise in my throat. But then the comments started revealing the real story. Mom posted under one of Emery's pregnancy photos. So excited to spoil this sweet baby the way he deserves. Our shining boy. Shining boy. Not our shining child, not our shining family. Always Jamie. Always the son who could do no wrong. And then under another post, I saw a comment from Emery's friend. Can't wait to see your whole family at the shower, even Tanya. My chest tightened. My mother's response came right after. We hope so. We're trying to encourage her to move past old grudges. Old grudges. Left me alone at a shopping mall. Called me a manipulative runaway. Sent me back to a house that felt like a cage. Cut me off for 9 years. Grudges. I slammed my laptop shut and forced myself to breathe. In, out, in, out. I tried to drown it out with work, with long warehouse shifts and longer commutes. I picked up extra hours, wiped sweat from my forehead, pushed heavy boxes, pushed myself harder. But no amount of physical exhaustion could silence the bruise-colored memories forming in my chest. Because the truth was simple. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted control. They needed me for something, and they weren't saying what. Then 3 nights later, everything snapped. I was in my apartment, half asleep on the couch, when I checked the mail I'd forgotten to bring in earlier. Among the bills and coupons was a single sheet of paper, folded in thirds, shoved into my mailbox, without an envelope. The handwriting was harsh and crooked. Stop being selfish. Your brother needs you. Show up or don't bother coming back. No signature. But I knew my father's handwriting better than my own. Selfish. The word punched me in the chest harder than I expected. It was the one they used for everything. When I asked for help carrying groceries. When I said I was tired. When I said I wasn't feeling well. When I got pneumonia at age 10 and they said I was being dramatic. Selfish, selfish, selfish. I sat on the floor, back against my fridge, that stupid paper shaking between my fingers. I wasn't sad. I wasn't hurt. I was angry. That was the moment things shifted. Not in a cinematic explosion, not in some dramatic epiphany. It was quieter than that, more dangerous. I realized I wasn't the broken one. They were. That single realization felt like a door unlocking inside me. Suddenly, I could breathe again, think again. I didn't owe them silence anymore. I didn't owe them anything. For the first time since that mall, I chose me. I put the note face down and decided to rebuild myself, not just survive. I changed my routine. Woke up early. Walked instead of drove. Cooked real meals. Turned on music I'd never tried before. Some songs made me uneasy. Some made me cry. Some made me feel alive again. And then one day after work, I ducked into an art supply store on impulse. The smell of graphite and acrylic paint hit me like a memory from a lifetime ago. I bought a sketch pad. Cheap pencils. Nothing special. That night I drew for the first time in over a decade. Just messy sketches, lines wobbling, like my hand wasn't used to anything delicate anymore. But it felt like breathing after being underwater too long. I cried quietly with the pencil still in my hand. Therapy helped too. I discovered the parts of myself I'd buried: anger, fear, hope, and a strange kind of softness I didn't know had survived. And somewhere in the middle of healing, I met Noah. It wasn't dramatic, not a movie meet cute. I bumped into him at the art store when I dropped a pack of charcoal pencils and he picked them up for me. He asked if I was an artist. I laughed awkwardly and said, "Only on paper." He smiled like he saw something I didn't. Coffee turned into conversations. Conversations turned into late-night phone calls. He didn't push. He didn't pry. He asked what I liked to draw and listened when I answered. We weren't serious yet, but he made me feel something I hadn't in years safe. By the time Jamie's baby shower approached, I felt steadier, stronger, calmer, until the final letter arrived. A real envelope this time, no return address. My name written gently, tentatively, like whoever wrote it wasn't sure they should. The handwriting was familiar, softer, smaller. It wasn't from my parents. It was from Jamie. My pulse pounded as I tore it open. Inside were 2 sheets of paper and a folded photo clipped to a sticky note with one word: proof. The note itself was short and shaky. Tanya, I know I'm the last person who deserves your time, but please read this. I wasn't allowed to tell you before. They made sure of that. But now I'm scared, not for me, for my son. Mom and Dad lied to you about everything. The night at the mall, the group home, why they cut you off. It wasn't your fault. They wanted you gone. You need to know why. Jamie. My hands went cold. Then I unfolded the photo. It was taken in our parents' living room. On the coffee table were 2 open folders. One was clearly labeled Estrangement Strategy. Tanya Barker. My breath vanished. Jamie wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was warning me. And suddenly the past 9 years made sense. This wasn't a family misunderstanding. It was a plan to erase me. And now I had the first piece of proof. For a long moment, I just sat there on my kitchen floor, legs folded awkwardly, the photo of those folders burning a hole in my hands. My brain wasn't keeping up. It felt like someone had yanked open a locked door inside me, and cold air rushed in so fast it made me dizzy. Estrangement Strategy. Tanya Barker. The words looked unreal, like they belonged in a conspiracy drama, not in my parents' living room, not in the house where I grew up, not written by the people who were supposed to raise me. I read the label again, and again. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. They planned this. They didn't just push me away, they strategized it. My parents, the people who told neighbors I was unstable, who told teachers I was dramatic, who insisted to social workers I was manipulative, they had written it down. They had documented it. They'd turned it into paperwork. And Jamie, my golden brother, was the one who showed me. I grabbed the second sheet of paper, the one that wasn't the photo, the full letter. His handwriting was nervous, slanted, rushed. I didn't know everything when we were kids. I wasn't told. I just believed them. I believed everything they said about you. I'm sorry for that. I stopped reading for a second. My vision blurred, not from tears yet, but from shock. Jamie continued, I thought you left because you didn't care about us. I thought you were selfish. But after I found out I was going to be a dad, I started to see things that didn't add up. The way Mom talks about you. The way Dad avoids any mention of you. The files, the folders, the emails. Emails. My hands shook as I read on. They told me you were unstable, that you were dangerous, that keeping you away was for my protection. But then I saw something that didn't make sense. Dad said you stole money once, but in another email, Mom wrote that you refused to cooperate with the narrative. Narrative. I felt sick. I know you don't owe me anything. I know I failed you, but I'm scared, Tanya. I'm going to be a father, and I see how they're already treating my son, and it's all wrong. I don't want him raised in that house. I don't want him shaped by them. I need help. Help! From me, the girl who slept in a Greyhound bathroom stall. The daughter they threw away, the sister he never protected. My throat tightened, my legs went numb. I read the final lines. I'm not asking you to forgive anyone. I'm just asking you to understand. I don't know how to do this alone. Jamie. I stared at the signature, my brother's name written in shaky black ink, and the dam inside me finally cracked. I didn't sob. I didn't collapse dramatically. It was quieter than that. A soft, painful inhale like someone had punched through my ribs and touched the part of me I'd buried at 13. Jamie had lied. He had mimicked them. He had benefited from everything that broke me. But he was also a child, a pawn, and now, a father terrified of becoming our parents. I wiped my face with my sleeve and reached for my phone. For the first time in 9 years, I typed his number. Tanya. Got your letter. Tanya. I believe you. Tanya, you, in or out? 3 dots appeared instantly. Jamie in, whatever it takes. That was the moment we chose each other, not as siblings, but as survivors. The next step was obvious. I needed proof, real proof, something airtight, and I knew exactly who could get it. I scrolled to a number I hadn't dialed in years. Marcus. We'd met during one of the darkest stretches of my early adulthood, 2 overworked, underpaid people trying to survive whatever scraps life threw at us. He'd been a former IT tech before being blacklisted for exposing corruption at his old job. Smart, loyal, terrifyingly skilled. The phone rang twice. Tanya. His voice sounded amused. Didn't think I'd ever hear from you again. Yeah, I exhaled. Long time. What's wrong? You only call me when something's on fire. Something's worse than on fire. I hesitated. I need recon. A low whistle. That's never a good sign. What kind of recon? I grabbed the photo again, the evidence trembling between my fingers. My parents, I said quietly. I need everything you can find. There was a pause. Not confusion, not judgment, just calculation. Digital footprint, he asked. Everything I said. Emails, cloud backups, bank statements, anything tied to my name, anything tied to Jamie's. And you want this for... Truth, I said, or revenge, maybe both. He snorted softly. Revenge is just truth with better timing. Give me 2 weeks. He hung up. It was happening. It was really happening. I had no plan yet, no revenge strategy, no detailed outlines, no idea where this would end. But I had something more powerful. Motivation, and a 9-year-old wound that had never closed. While Marcus got to work digging through their digital skeletons, I worked things from the inside with Jamie. We created a shared Google Doc under fake names, one that would have looked like a group project to anyone not reading closely. We logged events dates, memories, contradictions in our parents' stories. Jamie uploaded more photos from the house, kept secret taken quickly. Every detail added weight to the truth. My parents weren't reacting to me. They were managing me, crafting me, shaping me into the villain of their story. One photo made my stomach twist, a document titled Trust Access Strategy 2030. It was a breakdown of how my parents planned to transfer all family assets to Jamie by the time he turned 30. Under my section, there was a note. Tanya permanently estranged. No contact recommended. Narrative must remain consistent. Narrative. There it was again. Not love, not concern, not reconciliation. Narrative. I felt something cold settle in my bones. Jamie wasn't exaggerating. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't guessing. He was telling the truth. And it was worse than I ever imagined. A week later, Marcus sent me a single message. Marcus Ghost file ready. Brace yourself. He attached a link to an encrypted folder. When I opened it, the world shifted. Emails, deleted documents, PDFs, spreadsheets, lawyer communications, financial records. Dozens of files, hundreds of lies. I clicked the first email dated years ago. My mother had written to a church board member. Tanya has always been unstable. We're doing our best to manage her outbursts. Manage. Like I was a PR crisis. Another email from my dad to their lawyer read, we need to keep the narrative consistent. Estrangement must remain her decision. I felt my stomach drop. They weren't just erasing me. They were branding me. The trust fund records showed tens of thousands of dollars withdrawn from the account my grandmother created for my education, none of which had ever gone to me. Everything was labeled expenses I never received. I sat back shaking. This was not a dysfunctional family. This was a cover-up. And for the first time in my life, I understood something fully, painfully clearly. They didn't abandon me because they didn't care. They abandoned me because I knew too much. And now, I had everything I needed to bring their story crashing down. The night I opened Marcus's encrypted folder, I didn't sleep. I barely blinked. I sat on my couch with the laptop burning against my legs, scrolling through years of secrets. My secrets packaged neatly in color-coded PDF files, like my parents had turned the destruction of their daughter into an administrative hobby. There were email threads labeled Tanya Containment Strategy, Behavior Narrative Keep Unified, Long-Term Family Image Planning, Family Image, Image. It hit me hard. They never wanted a family. They wanted a brand. And I was the flaw in the brand, a mistake they needed to edit. One email, dated the year I turned 15, chilled me more than the others. My mother had written, Tanya is becoming more observant. She asks too many questions. We need to make sure she understands her place. Her place. The phrase made something inside me snap cleanly. My place was outside the mall at 13. My place was the group home. My place was silence. And now my place was holding every piece of their carefully hidden truth in my hands. I met Jamie the next night. We chose a neutral location, a park 2 towns over, sitting in my car to avoid the risk of anyone seeing us. He looked worse than I expected, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders hunched, like he was carrying an invisible weight. He climbed into the passenger seat and clenched his hands until his knuckles went white. You got it, he whispered. Everything. I turned the laptop toward him. He stared at the screen, at the email subjects, at the words, estrangement strategy. He swallowed hard. I knew it was bad, but Tanya, I didn't know it was this. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then something surprising happened. Jamie broke down. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, shaky inhale, the kind you make when the truth finally bulldozes through denial. I believed them, he said, voice cracking. I believed every awful thing they said about you. You were a kid, I murmured. I was old enough, he countered, old enough to see how unfair it all was. But I didn't want to lose what I had. There it was, the truth neither of us had said out loud. He had the love. I had the punishment. He had the safety. I had the target on my back. He looked at me, eyes wet. I don't know how to fix what I did. You don't have to fix the past, I said quietly. Just don't let them shape your future, or your son's. His hand drifted instinctively to his stomach, an unconscious gesture of protection. Fear. Determination. We exposed them, he said softly. All of it. It surprised me how steady my voice sounded when I answered. Yes. The first step was subtle. Manipulation disguised as peace. Jamie wrote an email to our parents from his account in his usual tone saying, I talked to Tanya. She's been in therapy. She wants to reconnect before the baby comes. Maybe we can all meet for dinner. They responded within minutes. Of course they did. My mother wrote a bright performative message dripping with emojis. This is wonderful news. Families should stay united. We're so proud of you for reaching out to her. Reaching out to me, I almost laughed. Then came the shorter message from my father. About time. I didn't respond. Jamie set the dinner for a Thursday evening at a mid-tier Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place my parents thought made them look cultured. He booked the private room, no witnesses, no staff interruptions. Perfect for what we needed. But before the dinner, I had one more step to handle. Noah, I need you to be honest with me, I said the night before the dinner. We sat on my balcony, candles flickering, a quiet night humming around us. He leaned forward, eyes soft but focused. Always. If you thought someone was manipulating you your whole life, if you found out your past wasn't what you thought, I hesitated. Would you want the truth, even if it hurt? He studied me for a long moment. Truth hurts, he said, but lies rot. A quiet breath. And you deserve better than rot. The simplicity of it hit me like a punch. No metaphors, no judgment, just clarity. I nodded. Tomorrow. I might need you afterward. I'll be here, he said. He meant it. I believed him. Maybe for the first time in my life, I believed someone. The next night, I walked into the restaurant feeling like my bones were made of lead. My palms were sweaty, heart pounding, my breathing uneven. But I wasn't the same 13-year-old girl they abandoned at the mall. I wore a simple blouse, jeans, and a small pin microphone hidden inside the fabric. The recorder sat in my purse, silent, unassuming. The door to the private room was closed. I paused, smoothed my hair, and opened it. My parents were already seated. My mom jumped up like she'd been waiting to perform the role of loving mother to Tanya. Oh, sweetheart, it's so good to see you. I leaned away from her attempted hug. She blinked, startled. My dad nodded stiffly. You're late. It took everything in me not to laugh. I sat down across from them, folding my hands. So I began, voice steady. I want to understand what happened between us. My mother's eyes lit up like someone had switched on a spotlight. Oh, Tanya, we're just so relieved. You finally realized how difficult you were as a teenager. You put us through so much. We tried our best. My father cut in. You always push people away. You made everything harder. I nodded, calm, patient, a therapist's dream client. I murmured. Go on. And they did. For 22 uninterrupted minutes, they lied. Lied smoothly, lied easily, lied the way some people breathe. They told me I'd exaggerated everything, that the mall incident was me being dramatic, that the group home was my choice, that they had tried everything to help me, that I'd run away from love. I let them talk. Every word recorded, every lie sealed. When they were done, I closed my notebook gently. "Thank you," I said softly. "That's very helpful." My mother smiled, relieved. "We're glad you understand." But they didn't know that the microphone in my blouse had captured their manipulations clearly, their contradictions perfectly, their rewritten history polished and recorded forever. I stood. "Enjoy your dinner," I said. Then I left. Jamie texted me one word. "Got it." I sent back, "Got it." Phase 1 was over. Phase 2 was about to begin. 3 days later, Jamie uploaded the final piece of our plan. A digital memory book for his unborn son, seemingly sweet, filled with ultrasounds and journal entries. But hidden inside, buried on the second-to-last tab, was a password-protected video titled, "Message for My Child." When the password was entered, the truth played. Jamie speaking to his future son, voice shaking but steady, talking about the lies, the manipulation, the sister he should have protected, the parents he could no longer trust. He didn't name them. He didn't have to. Anyone who knew our family would understand. He ended the video with, "Bravery isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just telling the truth when no one wants to hear it." And then he shared the memory book selectively, quietly, strategically. A childhood friend, a former teacher, a local journalist known for exposing generational abuse. And me. Everything was in place now. But my part wasn't done. Not even close. The journalist reached out 2 days after Jamie shared the memory book. His email was careful, respectful, almost hesitant, not the tone of someone chasing a story, but someone stepping into a minefield. "Hi, Tanya. I was given access to your brother's digital archive. I'd like to speak with you off the record at first, only if you're willing. Dylan Harper." I wasn't expecting the name to mean anything, but when I looked him up, my breath caught. He wasn't just a journalist. He specialized in long-form pieces about generational trauma, institutional failure, and quiet corruption. The kind of reporting that started community conversations and ended careers. Jamie hadn't just picked someone who could tell the story. He'd picked someone who could expose it. I stared at the message for a long time before typing. "I'm willing," Dylan replied instantly. "Tomorrow, your timing, your place." I chose my apartment. I wanted the power of being on my own ground. When Dylan arrived the next day, he wasn't what I expected. He wasn't older, hardened, or jaded. He was young, late 20s maybe, quiet, clean-cut, with a notebook tucked under his arm and a laptop bag slung across his chest. His eyes, though, sharp, observant, the kind that didn't miss a single detail. He didn't shake my hand immediately. He asked softly, "Is this okay?" Consent mattered to him. I nodded. "Yeah, come in." We sat at my small kitchen table. The sunlight from the balcony spilled across the floor. My plants inched toward it, alive in ways my childhood never allowed me to be. Dylan opened his notebook. "Tanya, before anything else, I want to make sure you know you don't owe me a story." I blinked. "Then why are you here?" He smiled almost sadly, because sometimes stories owe themselves to the truth. He pressed record on a small device, but didn't ask a single question. Instead, he said, "Whatever you're ready to say, start there." I didn't begin with the mall. I didn't begin with the abandonment. I began with the baby shower invitation, the crack in the facade, the reminder that ghosts don't stay buried just because you ignore them. Then slowly, carefully, painfully, I peeled back the layers. The mall incident, the silence, the group home, the way teachers believed my parents because their performance was polished and mine was shaky and scared. The years of being nothing but a shadow to the golden child. Dylan didn't interrupt, not once. When I finished, my throat was raw, my fingertips numb from gripping the edge of the table. He finally spoke. "Tanya, this isn't just neglect. This is deliberate reputation engineering." "Yes." My voice shook, but not from fear, from focus. "They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a narrative. And you disrupted that narrative. By existing," I whispered. He nodded slowly, not judgmental, just understanding. Then he asked, "Do you want anonymity?" It was a question that shouldn't have hit so hard. But it did, because anonymity was safety, silence, distance. But silence was how they got away with everything. "No," I said quietly. "If I hide, they win again." Dylan clicked his pen closed. "All right," he said softly. "Then we tell your story." For the next 3 hours, we worked. Dylan photographed every document, emails, PDF files, spreadsheets, withdrawal records from the trust fund account. He listened to the audio recording from the dinner my parents rewriting history in perfect stereo clarity. He didn't react emotionally, he reacted professionally. This is pattern-based, he murmured. Scripted. Coordinated manipulation, not impulsive. Is that unusual, I asked? Unusual. He shook his head. Tanya, this is textbook long-term image control, the kind that usually happens in corporations or political campaigns, not families. A cold weight settled in my stomach. He closed his laptop with a soft click. I'll contact Jamie separately, he said. But Tanya, are you prepared for what happens when this goes public? I exhaled. No, but I'm prepared for what happens if it doesn't. He nodded and left quietly, offering a soft, "You're brave," before the door closed. Brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt something sharper. I felt ready. 3 days later, the article dropped. It wasn't a blog post or a gossip piece. It wasn't sensationalized. It wasn't dramatized. It was devastating. The daughter. They tried to erase a story of abandonment, manipulation, and manufactured estrangement by Dylan Harper. The article opened with the mall incident, then the group home, then the financial theft, then the emails. Everything was laid out in clear, meticulous detail. Screenshots of the estrangement strategy folder, audio clips from the dinner, whited out records showing trust fund withdrawals, email threads where my parents coordinated lies, a timeline of manipulation spanning over a decade. My name was in it. Jamie's name was in it. Our parents' identities were masked legally necessary, but anyone from our hometown, anyone who knew us, would know exactly who it was about. Within hours, it blew up. It started small dozens of comments, then hundreds, then thousands. People wrote things like, "This is heartbreaking. I lived this. I feel seen. Her parents are monsters. This needs legal follow-up. Protect that baby. Manipulation like this is abuse, period." Then local radio hosts picked it up. Then a regional station. By evening, it was trending statewide. By the next morning, it had gone national. People were outraged, empathetic, emotional. Some shared their own stories. Others vowed to cut toxic family ties. Some asked how to support me. Others demanded accountability. My parents had spent decades crafting the perfect family image. Dylan dismantled it in 48 hours. My mother called first. Her voice was high-pitched, frantic. "Tanya, what have you done? This is unfair. This is slander. This is cruel." Cruel. The irony almost choked me. I didn't answer. I let the voicemail fill with her panic. Then my father called. His message was quieter, controlled. "Tanya, we need to talk, immediately. You don't understand what you've caused." But he was wrong. I understood perfectly. For the first time in my life, they were the ones scrambling. Not me, not Jamie, them. And I didn't owe them a single word. What I wasn't expecting was the call from the state's Financial Crimes Division. "Ms. Barker, the investigator said we received an anonymous tip supported by substantial documents about trust fund misappropriation involving your name." Anonymous. I knew exactly who had made that tip. "Marcus, we need you to confirm the validity of certain documents," the investigator continued. "If verified, this may move into a formal inquiry." I closed my eyes. A formal inquiry. Into my parents. For the first time, the system didn't dismiss the girl at the mall. The system listened. And something inside me, something that had lived crooked and small since childhood, rose slowly, painfully into alignment. I wasn't just reclaiming my story. I was reclaiming my name. And that was something they could never take back. The universe didn't explode the moment the investigation began. There was no dramatic knock on my parents' door, no flashing lights, no breaking news headline about financial crimes. It all moved slowly, quietly, like erosion. But erosion is still destruction. It's just patient. The day after the state's inquiry letter reached my parents, everything shifted. I didn't need confirmation. I felt it. The air seemed different, as if a storm was rolling in but hadn't announced itself yet. Jamie texted me from a burner app we use for safety. "Jamie, they're freaking out. They won't say why, but Dad's pacing nonstop. Jamie, Mom keeps wiping down the kitchen counters like she's scrubbing guilt off the surface. Jamie, they're scared, Tanya." I stared at the messages for a long moment, a strange ache pulling at my ribs. They were scared, not because they'd hurt me, not because they'd lied, but because the consequences were finally catching up. Another message came minutes later. "Jamie, I'm done pretending. I'm moving out tonight." My breath caught. He wasn't asking permission. He wasn't hesitating. He'd made his choice. "Tanya. Do you need help, Jamie? No. I need courage, Jamie. But will you be on standby, just in case? Tanya, always." He moved out with nothing but a packed duffel bag and the baby's ultrasound photos tucked into the outer pocket. Emery picked him up in her old Honda, and despite everything, the sight of her face drawn, exhausted, scared, made my chest tighten. They weren't villains. They were victims, too. Jamie later told me the scene inside the house was awful. Mom cried, Dad yelled. Mom switched between begging and blaming. Dad called him ungrateful. The phrases were painfully familiar. You're choosing Tanya over us. You're being manipulated. She wants to destroy this family. We protected you from her. We raised you. You owe us. He told me he didn't say a single cruel word in response. He didn't shout. He didn't defend me. He didn't explain. He just said, I'm protecting my son. And then he walked out. 3 days passed before the next blow landed. Not from me, not from Jamie, not from Dylan. From their church. My parents had been pillars of their congregation for years, leading committees, organizing events, preaching about family values and proper upbringing. They had built a social identity rooted in righteousness and moral superiority. But righteousness doesn't stand up well against evidence. The church board requested copies of specific documents mentioned in public reporting. The article had been vague for legal reasons, but not vague enough for people close to them to miss the obvious. My mother got the call during dinner. She later wrote a frantic email to her sister, which Jamie forwarded to me. Someone is trying to ruin our reputation. They want to see financial records. They want explanations. They think we abused Tanya. This is outrageous. The outrage wasn't for me. It never had been. That night, the board temporarily removed both my parents from their leadership roles. Not fired, not exiled, not humiliated. Just paused. But for people like them, people who fed off image attention and control, being paused was the same as being crushed. Their perfect public mask had cracked. And when masks crack, people start looking at what's beneath. My mother called me 8 times that week. My father called twice. I didn't answer either. Their voicemails were a descending timeline of unraveling. Voicemail 1. Tanya, we need to discuss this. Families solve things privately. Voicemail 2. You're being irresponsible. Dylan twisted your words. Voicemail 3. Jamie is confused. You're manipulating him. Voicemail 4. Your brother is ruining everything. Voicemail 5. We raised you better than this. Voicemail 6. You owe us a conversation. Voicemail. Sob heavy breathing. You've embarrassed us. What people must think. Voicemail. 8. Call us. It wasn't grief, it wasn't introspection, it was panic. Image-driven panic. They didn't want forgiveness, they wanted damage control. But I was done being managed. I forwarded every voicemail to Dylan for documentation. Meanwhile, Jamie and I were rebuilding something fragile and new. We met every few days, sometimes at his apartment, sometimes at mine, sometimes in quiet parks, where we could talk without eyes on us. Little by little, we pieced together a childhood we'd never questioned until it was too late. You know, Jamie said one evening as we sat on a bench overlooking a small pond, I used to think Mom and Dad were perfect. You were allowed to, I said gently. I wasn't. He looked down at his hands, large, capable, shaking slightly. I didn't know how much I didn't know, he whispered. I didn't know how much you went through. I didn't want to see it. You were a kid. So were you, he said quietly. And you survived alone. Those words cracked something inside me that had been welded shut for years. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But for the first time, we sat in the same truth. Not as golden child and scapegoat, but as siblings on the same side of the battlefield. Around this time, Noah became more than a side note in my life. He read Dylan's article without telling me. I found out because he showed up at my apartment that night with takeout, sat on the couch beside me, and said, You don't have to pretend you're fine. I tried to brush it off. I'm handling it. He shook his head. Handling isn't the same as healing. Those words undid me. I leaned against him quietly, carefully, like someone approaching sunlight, after years in a cave. He didn't ask for details. He didn't push. He just stayed, fingers tracing slow circles along my back, grounding me in a way I never thought possible. Noah didn't fix me. He just didn't flinch. That was enough. 1 week after the article hit, the financial crimes investigator called again. Ms. Barker, he said, we've confirmed inconsistencies in the trust fund withdrawals. We'll need your cooperation as we proceed. The phrases he used, asset diversion, unreported withdrawals, unauthorized transfers, tilted the world beneath me. This could take months, he warned, maybe longer. That's fine, I said, because healing isn't fast. Justice isn't fast. Erosion isn't fast. But they are inevitable. The final voicemail from my father came late on a Tuesday night. His voice was small, not angry, not sharp, not arrogant. Just tired. Tanya, he said quietly, you won. I hope you're satisfied. I listened twice, not because I wanted to hear it again, but because I wanted to make sure I heard the tone right. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't taking responsibility. He was mourning his loss of control. But he was wrong. This wasn't about winning. This wasn't about revenge. This was about clarity, about rewriting the story they had written for me, about taking back what had been stolen, not money, not inheritance, but identity. 3 weeks later, Jamie's son was born. He didn't call our parents. He called me. Tanya, he whispered over the phone, voice thick with emotion. Can you come? I arrived at the hospital 15 minutes later. Jamie's girlfriend, Emery, lay in the bed, exhausted but glowing in a way I'd never seen. Jamie stood beside her, cradling a tiny baby boy with a tuft of dark hair. Do you want to hold him? He asked. I froze. Are you sure? He nodded. You're my sister. The good one, Emery added softly. My throat closed. I held the baby Jonah in my arms, and something inside me shifted. Not forgiveness, not forgetting. Just release. A weight I'd carried since childhood finally loosened. Jamie looked at me, eyes shining. I want him to know the truth, he whispered. But I want him to know you too. Not the version they crafted, the real you. For the first time in my life, I felt seen. Truly seen. By someone who once believed every lie they told. The next morning, I received one final email from my mother. Just one sentence. We don't understand why you're doing this. Please don't contact us again. I read it once, then deleted it. I didn't need the last word. Because the life I built, the truth that existed now, the people who chose me, that was the last word. And as I walked out of the hospital that morning, sunlight warming my face, realization bloomed quietly inside me. They didn't abandon me at 13. They freed me. They just never imagined I'd learn to live without them. But I did, and I wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. The morning after Jonah was born, the hospital halls were quiet in that soft, reverent way. Only newborn wings manage like everyone instinctively lowers their voices out of respect for new beginnings. I walked down the corridor alone, the soles of my shoes squeaking softly against the polished floor, each step lighter than the one before. For once in my life, I didn't feel like I was walking towards something painful. I felt like I was walking out of something that had chased me for years, something heavy, something sharp, something shaped like the Barker family narrative. Outside, the sun was already warm despite the early hour. A breeze brushed my shoulders, lifting the stray hairs at my neck like a gentle hand. I stopped by the railing outside the entrance, closing my eyes, breathing, really breathing. For the first time in years, each inhale didn't taste like fear. Each exhale didn't feel like bracing for impact. Somewhere behind me, a door slid open and shut. Then quiet footsteps approached. You look lighter, a voice said softly. I opened my eyes. Noah stood beside me. He hadn't texted, hadn't called. He'd just shown up as if he knew instinctively that I needed him without needing to be told. Maybe that was what trust felt like. I am lighter, I admitted. He nodded, leaning against the railing beside me. How was it? My lips curved the smallest but truest smile. Beautiful, terrifying, perfect. Jamie, okay. As okay as someone can be after detonating the truth in the middle of his entire life. And you? The question hit differently. I wasn't used to being asked how I was not in a way that expected a real answer. I took a breath. I don't feel broken anymore. He didn't smile. He looked relieved. That's good, he murmured. You deserve that. The days after Jonah's birth blurred in a quiet, gentle way. Not chaotic, not stressful, just different. Jamie and Emery settled into their new apartment, tiny and cluttered, but filled with warmth. I visited often, partly to help, partly because Jonah's tiny fingers curling around mine made old wounds loosen in my chest. I spent long afternoons sketching him as he slept, his impossibly small eyelashes, the curve of his cheek, the tiny fist he kept tucked under his chin. Drawing him became a kind of therapy, a reminder that innocence still existed somewhere in this world, that cycles could break. One afternoon, as I finished shading the soft outline of his hair, Jamie spoke from the couch. Do you ever think about what happens next? I lifted my pencil. What do you mean? He hesitated, rubbing Jonah's back gently. With Mom and Dad, with the investigation, with everything. A part of me expected the familiar weight of dread to settle in my stomach, but it didn't. It barely even stirred. I think I said slowly that what happens next isn't up to them anymore. Jamie looked at me, and for the first time in our entire lives, we met as equals, as people choosing a future instead of repeating a past. He nodded. I'm glad you're here, Tanya. I swallowed. Me too. The financial inquiry deepened. I was contacted again, asked to sign statements verifying my grandmother's trust fund intentions. They explained the process, the potential outcomes, corrective action, reimbursement, penalties, charges. I listened with calm I never thought I'd have. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't panicking. The past no longer controlled me. I wasn't the girl in the mall anymore. I wasn't the scapegoat. I wasn't the daughter they wrote out of the story. I was the one rewriting it now. My parents withdrew from public life, completely. Their house, once bustling with church members and nosy neighbors, became quiet. Curtains closed. Cars in the driveway unmoved. Lights off earlier each night. Jamie showed me a screenshot one morning. My mother had deleted all her social media. Every smile, every curated moment, every brag about her shining boy, gone. Dad's church committees replaced him with someone new, kind, humble, the opposite of the man who once dominated a room with his self-appointed authority. Their silence didn't feel triumphant. It felt final, like they'd retreated into a version of themselves they could manage behind closed doors. People asked me if I wanted to confront them, if I wanted closure. But closure doesn't always look like a conversation. Sometimes closure is silence. Sometimes closure is a door you stop trying to open. Then one afternoon, Dylan reached out again. "Hi, Tanya, we've been contacted by a national magazine. They want to do a follow-up piece focusing on healing, not trauma. They'd like your perspective only if you want to share it." Healing. The word sat strangely in my mouth, unfamiliar, almost foreign. He added, "You can say no. You've already shared enough." I typed back. Maybe I'm ready to share the part that comes after. Because pain wasn't the whole story. It was only the beginning. The interview wasn't dramatic. It wasn't intense. It wasn't emotional carnage laid bare. It was gentle, reflective, human. They asked what I'd learned. I said, that healing isn't an ending. It's a beginning. They asked if I hated my parents. I said no. Hate requires closeness, requires wanting something. I don't want anything anymore. They asked what I would tell Jonah when he grew up. I said that the truth doesn't have to be loud to be real. They asked what I'd tell my 13-year-old self. I paused a long time, then answered. I'd tell her she wasn't abandoned. She was set free. Weeks passed. Life softened around the edges. Small, ordinary joys started to appear in places that once felt empty sunlight on my balcony, Noah's laugh echoing in my kitchen, Jonah gripping my finger like he owned my heart. And one evening, as I sat sketching Jonah again, this time with Jamie asleep beside him on the couch, something clicked inside me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a revelation. It was a quiet truth settling into place like a puzzle piece finally finding its home. I survived. Not in spite of them, but without them. I built a life in the cracks they left behind. And it was real. And it was mine. And it was enough. Later that night, Noah walked me home from Jamie's apartment. The street was quiet, the sky dusky with stars. He slipped his hand into mine, not demanding, not assuming, just offering. "You okay?" he asked. I looked up at him and realized something beautifully simple. I was. "I'm better than okay," I said. His smile was small, soft, proud. "You're extraordinary," he said. And for once I didn't argue. As I unlocked my apartment door, I glanced back at the street, the soft glow of streetlights, the quiet hum of night, the sense that a chapter of my life had closed itself without anger, without vengeance, simply without me needing to hold it open. I stepped inside, the door shut gently behind me, and just like that I understood. Healing wasn't loud, it wasn't violent, it wasn't cinematic. It was quiet, a soft exhale, an unclenched fist, a life I no longer apologize for living. My parents hadn't abandoned me at 13. They freed me. They just never imagined I would grow wings where they tried to break bones. But I did, and I wasn't going back, not now, not ever.